Hello, Bame Farm fans. Well, you see the tires are off the flatbed truck. Because when I was hauling a tractor, this lovely one behind me, for Craig, back to him, my brakes went out. And I have new parts, so he can't see what happened. But there's one thing that I'm hating more than mud, and it's rust. Yes, these Bud rims with the double nuts. Only one of them came apart. The other side did much better. Needed a trusty and not as rusty torque multiplier. That was lovely. And on this other side, we'll take a quick look to see the new caliper down here in the darkness. That's more shiny black than just dark and rusty. That's almost in place. I'm gonna need a friend, and hopefully we'll see Bandit soon to give me a hand. But this side came apart nicely, comparatively. The other side, I gotta figure out what to do. So back to the other side. We're walking around here seeing everything in Craig's shop. But over here, you see what happened there? So when these were loosening, and these are left-handed threads on the driver's side, lefty-tighty. Then I figured out how to get these back, but when it loosened them, it pushed the studs out of the back of the hub, which is fine and dandy. Except now here I am. I figured out a way I can get them reseated. And if all else fails, I'm gonna somehow try to put 2 tires on, and probably need like 3 people to like push the tires on, somebody to start them, and maybe we'll get them to tighten somewhat properly-ish. Definitely more to come. We need a big planning meeting of all the minds right now. We're back the next day. And I don't know what you can see in the darkness, but we can always get good old trouble light over here and take a look. That this side, the original side with the problems, is now back together. We kind of missed out on that last night because I ran short on battery. But never fear, we have a whole nother side we're dealing with. And this side has its own sets of problems. That side actually came apart well. If you remember when we left off, that the Bud wheel nuts, well, they're stuck together. The nuts wouldn't come off the cap nuts. What a blast, right? Well, we found a solution. The local truck shop in the next town, love those guys. They let me borrow, or we first got to borrow this. And it worked great. You take the big nut off, and then you can use the square portion to fit that. Now this is 13/16. Not 3/4, not 1 inch, 13/16. So I was hoping, maybe we could rig something up with an extension on there backwards. No. There's actually a square socket out there, and that truck shop had a square socket they let me borrow, and that's actually a tool, but they welded on that Bud lug nut to give leverage. So we'll make one noisy demonstration here real quick. It's a very tight fit. But this obviously goes over the nut. Might want to hammer so it's securely fitted. Then we can use our socket. Now I did find these online, but I have ants in my pants. And like any other millennial, I want to do things now. Darn, I want to work today and not wait for a tool to come in tomorrow. And the dumb thing is these are left-hand threaded, but we need it for right-hand loosening because we're turning the bolt and not the nut. Yay, the air compressor is running because we use that much air. But that's one free. Give me a few minutes for the rest. for our viewing pleasure, take a look. This is the less bad caliper. The bad one I already replaced. I guess I didn't expect this one to be so bad. And the pads weren't worn until we sort of destroyed them with a lot of hammering on the caliper here to get it off because of rust, and more rust. Not sure what I hate more, rust or mud. So yeah, those are eaten up. The other one blew the pistons out because the pad was gone. Just a lot of rust here. So let's go get a fresh brand new one. Well, we have a lovely shiny black, most likely reman caliper. This one comes with this piece, this nice little bar, which we didn't quite mangle, but altered it slightly getting it off. A fresh anchoring bolt, fresh bleeder screw, a spring, and these bolts are for the back plate, which we did not take off. And I've gone through and did my best with a wire wheel to shine up those surfaces. So now we need to get our pads and also whip out the Tin Man's KY jelly. And we're just gonna lather everything up down here, hit all the surfaces real good, because we don't want it to rust together. We want it to come apart. Hopefully not fall apart, and I don't plan on doing brakes on this for a long time because it's not a high mileage vehicle. I don't drive it daily, weekly at best, depending upon time of year. We're just gonna make it all shiny and silvery. And it's probably gonna get everywhere. But hopefully it comes apart in 10 years. So the fun feature of the brakes is that we have two different pads, two different styles. One of them actually sort of sits, oh, well, that one, it's not as tight as fit as the other one going in. And the other pad, we come down here, the darkness has its own, well, own special little spot down here. I should probably get all that schmutz out of there. But there's like this bracket. Well, I'm not good at that. It's got its, like the mounting bracket here that holds. The caliper also holds the pad in place. Never seen this style before. It's just got these two like bars sticking out. Of course, this isn't going to slide together quickly or nicely for me like I had hoped and planned. Oh, come on. Might need a bit more of a hammer. Let's see how silvery we can get. We have to, and this is the worst part of this whole operation, is putting the brake line in before you actually mount the caliper. Maybe because I didn't take enough stuff apart. That could potentially help. So we just get good at swirling the caliper around. Should have waited a few seconds before I silver jellied this. Oh, everything's gonna shine now. Okay. The pad's gotta go back in the caliper because that so nicely fell out. Everybody comes close. I can sort of sit this here for a hot second. We need to get, we put that in backwards. That's not gonna get us far. That's a real smart move. Can't believe we can go in backwards. That's better. We've got ceramic on steel instead of steel on steel. Yay, silver hands. Now, this is where it'd be great to get you guys in here closer. But this bar and this tab go underneath the bottom of the caliper. Usually requires some hammering and a good strong hand to hold that up in the air. I'll show you guys how it is part of the way started. It's a small struggle to keep the caliper lifted up, but also pushed in. You gotta get the spring and that bar in. But I got it wiggled in far enough, and now I gotta tap it in with a hammer. So it's not like I'm used to Ford calipers, and there's 2 bolts on the back side and it comes loose. I don't necessarily begrudge this system, but it did lock up and wasn't allowing these to slide as they should. Now we have the little holding screw that goes in here, and it's a good thing that it doesn't actually tighten anything. If you can see that it's got threads and that big thicker portion, it keeps the bar from moving, but it's not supposed to tighten against the bar at all. And I'm probably not going to show bleeding the brakes. This is not what this video is about, unless the bleeding the brakes goes horribly awry. That's tight. That shouldn't fall out. Time for wheels. We'll have a quick demonstration of how these lug nuts work before we go into fast motion of putting the wheels on. So we see the bottom there kind of has a chamfered edge. Same thing with the hole in the wheel. And you stick it in, and you don't want it to stick up like it's countersunk enough that it sits in the wheel, because we're going to have another rim right next to this, and we don't want the lug nut sticking out. And that way the wheels are tightened to each other. And theoretically, obviously, the back wheel will be tight with this, and then there's a secondary nut to tighten the other wheel to this wheel. But even then, it's putting a lot of pressure through, so obviously this wheel shouldn't go anywhere. Shouldn't. I did shine a few of them up. It's definitely not new. I wouldn't say it's great, but there's still a chamfered edge, and there's no chance of that pulling through because there's still enough metal there. And don't forget, we're gonna lather these up good with more Tin Man KY jelly. So hopefully the next time I do this, the wheel will come off, or whenever I put new tires on. We did that to the other side real good. And according to Bandit, if that stuff is all over the wheel, it makes the highway patrol real happy, because then they think the truck's been worked on, and so they won't have as close an eye when they inspect. Because that shows maintenance and care.
I don't think I laid this out well earlier in the video as to why I'm doing the brakes on the truck. The rear passenger side caliper blew out the pistons because the inner brake pad wore out, because the caliper stopped sliding on its mounting bars because, well, rust. So that's why I'm here. Other than that, the rest of the brakes, at least the pads, look pretty okay. But the caliper on the driver's side, the piston heads were really rough looking. In the fronts, I just did because I was doing brakes. I might as well start with fresh pads all the way around. Yeah, there's a lot of bolts and threads here on this wheel. Made sure they're all silvery. I don't plan on doing this again for a long, long time, but they better come apart. I was lucky I didn't have to replace any of the rotors. None of them were eaten up too bad. The one that blew the pistons out wasn't spectacular. If it was a daily driver, I'd think about replacing it. But since this truck sees such little mileage, that's going to be enough to survive.
Well, now we get to see the torque multiplier in action on the last stubborn nut. There was only 3 stubborn nuts on this wheel. We got to have some place for it to get leverage off of. It's on the nut, and I get to use my foot to keep the wheel from turning because I I got it jacked up. And now we just crank and crank. If we look real close, that socket's turning real slow. It doesn't take much. And now we can come back with the big air impact and zip it right off. But for some reason it didn't have enough ugga-duggas the first time. NASCAR pit stops. I'm putting new pads on the front just because I'm here. And the one was not pretty. The pad was starting to come apart. It was in the early stages, but I figured since I'm messing with the stuff right now, I'll do it all. And from this angle, I can show off much easier how this whole clip mechanism is supposed to go in. Now I was trying to put it in from the back side. Oops. It comes in from the front here. We got to roll it over. Still upside down. There's nothing really to put the camera on, except for you're sitting on the hub right now. Here we go. With my hands in the way, the biggest thing. So I figure gravity should be on my side, that this shouldn't be too hard to get started. Oh boy, but it does not. There we go. It was settled too far in, voila. It's all a matter of lining things up. And then it slides over to a point for which we grab a trusty hammer. And tap it in. Maybe a smaller hammer would suffice. This is definitely a big enough one. And I gotta get lined up for that bolt hole right there. Looks like I need to go over a little farther to put in our special little bolt there in the darkness.